Good morning, everyone. Welcome to I believe we're on the 4th episode of the All Sports Podcast. I am your host, Steve Wellbaum, and thank you all for joining me this lovely morning. It's gotten a lot warmer since we last met up, but still pretty cold out here in Southwest Ohio. Like to thank everybody that has been constantly giving me support for these past couple of videos. But let's just get into the topics because I got a full slate today of some stuff going on. So hope you're all excited. We're going to start off with the NBA today. I don't really talk about the NBA as much as I would like to, just because football season is such a short amount of time, and I feel like I need to focus my efforts on football as much as I can, because the NBA kind of goes on all year and has like a couple months of off season. And same with world soccer. That's why I'm not as emphasized in world soccer as I am in football. But I would like to start off with the NBA, and I'm sorry for all the NBA fans that really enjoy listening to me talk about the NBA. It's just there's so much going on with football. So first off, I think the surprise of this season, outside of Memphis looking like a real playoff team, I love what Memphis is doing. That's a little side note. I think Ja Morant is going to run away with the Rookie of the Year now that Zion is out. Ja Morant is just I don't think he has exactly the numbers that you would get in a Rookie of the Year, but he is just talent upon talent. He is Lamar Jackson in the NBA. He's just embarrassing people with all of his. He can just juke out anyone. I honestly think he should win Rookie of the Year, and he's my Rookie of the Year nominee, barring an injury or whatever. But regardless, I got off on the wrong foot. Phoenix is is the surprise of the league. I didn't realize how much of an influence Ricky Rubio moving to that team would be. Ricky Rubio is 3rd in assists right now, which means he's getting the ball to his playmaking shooters in Cam Johnson and Devin Booker. Those two, I remember watching both of those in college at North Carolina, and when Devin Booker, was he in? I want to say he was in Oklahoma, but oh god. That's going to bother me. I'll have to look that up later. But I remember watching both of those players in college, especially Cam Johnson last year. He was a stud. Him and Kobe White were the two that really led North Carolina to be as good as they were last year. And Kobe White has been playing great for the Bulls. So I completely understand. I really like what North Carolina did with both of those players. So Ricky Rubio, all he has to do is get the ball to his playmakers and play defense, because that's kind of something that Cam Johnson can play defense. He proved that at North Carolina, but they needed somebody stronger like a Ricky Rubio to really step in and be a leader on that team. And I think that's why Phoenix has, if I have this correctly, they beat Portland. They beat the Clippers with Kawhi, which people will say, well, they didn't beat him with Kawhi. Well, they did. They did beat him with Kawhi, and Kawhi scored 30 in that game. They beat Memphis, who I think is a really solid team, and I think they can get a playoff spot, though they're a little young. They beat Brooklyn, who everyone thinks is going to be a playoff team and will make and will threaten for championships when KD comes back. They beat Philly, who is my favorite still to make the championship, and they took Denver to overtime and had another close game with Denver, who people also think that Denver could make the conference finals. I think they could. I don't. Denver's kind of, if you take away Jokic, they're kind of limited just because he's so much of a vital asset to that team. But regardless, all of those teams are going to be or bubble playoff teams. So I really like Phoenix's chances to make the playoffs, and I don't think there is a little theme with Phoenix, and one of my favorite shows, Pardon the Interruption, kind of talks about this a lot. That the Phoenix Suns are 2 years away from being 2 years away, like for their entire careers up until like Charles Barkley was there, really. But I think they are like a year away at this moment. Like if they could get another big name star, they don't have to. I don't think they have to get a Zion or a Ja Morant. They just have to get somebody, and we'll see this play out in the rest of the college basketball year, which I'm very excited for. We will see who can take that next step for Phoenix. And I think they have a great foundation, and I think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they're kind of like Brooklyn last year. If they can get another big name free agent, which I promise you there will be a big name free agent that gets fed up with wherever they are and they want to leave, because that's just how the NBA works. And they will want to come to Phoenix because they can, first off, they can lead that team. Ricky Rubio is leading the team currently, but whoever comes in there is going to lead the team farther. And I just think it's going to be better off for that team to grab a big name star, either from free agency or from the draft. And I think the draft is probably going to be better for a smaller market team like that. But hey, we don't know that. That's next year. We're gonna focus on this year. So I think they'll make the playoffs. And I really like what Phoenix is doing. Kudos to Phoenix. And now to kind of go to a I guess this is sort of a good thing and a bad thing. So I have a good friend that's a big Kyrie Irving fan. We actually went to the Pacers game together. Had a lot of fun, but I'm sorry, Mitchell, but I just got to say this. Boston has done some addition by subtraction by getting rid of their best piece and their leader to the playoffs in Kyrie Irving and putting in Kemba Walker. This is something that I personally believe in sports, is that your ability to build a team and everyone buy into a team is really valuable. You can see that when Kemba Walker is on the court, like if you watch the Celtics last year, you could see that players were kind of and coaches were kind of when they were looking at Kyrie and talking to Kyrie. And Kyrie obviously looked like he didn't want to be there, because he basically said he didn't want to be there several times throughout the season. And with that kind of culture, there's no way they were going to make the NBA Finals. Even with everybody healthy last playoffs, it wasn't going to happen. The 76ers are a complete roster. They have one of the best rosters in the NBA. The Raptors had so many rising pieces, and when all is said and done, Kawhi could be the best player, or the second best or third best player in NBA history, because he could theoretically win with 3 teams. And with 3, he could theoretically get 3 Finals MVPs. So that's the Toronto Raptors were going to beat him. The the Milwaukee Bucks, I think the Celtics did have a chance against Milwaukee, but Milwaukee just brushed them aside and didn't even worry about it, and were on their way to the next round. So what I'm kind of getting at is Kemba Walker, when he was in Charlotte, one of the things that I really respected about him is he doesn't feel the need to carry the team. Also, the Celtics don't need carried. They have a great roster with Hayward and Smart and Tatum. They have all the players they need. They just needed a big name star to come in and solidify that, like a Kemba Walker and what they thought would be a Kyrie. But Kyrie, I think I really like the Celtics going forward, because I think this is the key to getting past where they have been in the playoffs. I think they will make the conference finals again. I do have a little pushback on making them the East champions, because I think Philadelphia has the better roster. But I think they will dominate teams in the playoffs, and they will get there, and they will take Philly to 7 games. I think they'll take Philly to 7 games, because I really think they will be playing against, and this sounds a little weird, but they might be rallied to kind of stick it to Kyrie. And I could see Brooklyn and Boston playing against each other in the NBA and in the playoffs, which would be a great series to watch. Oh my gosh, tons of drama. This is my favorite part of the NBA season, is the playoffs, because it's just, you're grinding. It's the best basketball. They coach them tight. They call the games tight. There's no James Harden walking to the basket to lay it up. Oh, God, it's great basketball, and I love the NBA playoffs almost as much as the NFL playoffs. But yeah. Anyways, addition by subtraction. Adding Kemba, getting rid of Kyrie. So that's enough about the NBA. Now moving on to the NFL. I have a confession to make. We're gonna do where Steve was right and where Steve was wrong. And I kind of wanted to. This is kind of a draft themed episode of the All Sports Podcast for the NFL. So last year, when I was looking at the quarterback prospects to come out of each school and go into the draft, I was a little biased. I always thought that that Kyler Murray was super undersized. I thought that he had a great arm. He had a great release. He knew the playbook. He was a genius with the playbook at Oklahoma, because of his head coach, Lincoln Riley, giving him all the pieces he needed. And I kind of said to myself, well, Kyler Murray is a quarterback who is bred for that system in Oklahoma and under Lincoln Riley. I mean, Baker Mayfield flourished in that, and he was doing great at the time. So why isn't it just the system and not the quarterback? Because the way that system is built anyways, it's built to be, I'm going to let this quarterback do what he wants and roam around, get open, extend plays. And because he's basically using spread concepts throughout the entire course of him being at Oklahoma. And when he was, I believe he was at, he was at A&M, and A&M was using some spread concepts as well with Johnny Manziel. So they would have been able to utilize him as well from that. So going into the draft, I was like, okay, the best quarterback in the draft is Dwayne Haskins. Though, if Kyler were to be in a system where they could utilize him, he would be a decent quarterback. He wouldn't be fantastic or anything. And I had the same issue that a lot of scouts had, where his size would be a huge issue because he takes a couple hits and he could be out. And I still believe that could happen. I still think if he takes a big hit from a Nick Bosa or I don't know, I'm trying to think of some other players, an Aaron Donald, he will be out cold, I think, if in that kind of scenario, just because he's undersized. But I was so wrong. Kyler Murray is tearing up people. The San Francisco game really showed that. I know Garoppolo had a lot of picks, so Kyler got a lot of snaps. But man, that defense for San Francisco is a real that's probably top 3 defense in the entire NFL. Like Belichick's defense, San Francisco's defense, and probably the Saints defense when everyone's healthy for all those teams, obviously. I think Marshawn Lattimore, as a side note, Marshawn Lattimore really needs to come back to the Saints for them to get their full potential, because that was kind of scary, the Atlanta game, not having him. Anyways, I really think that Kyler Murray is at this point, I firmly believe that Kyler Murray will win the Rookie of the Year. It'll be him or Bosa. There's no other real big contenders. I mean, I don't really think there's going to be too many other rookies that really take it out, unless Gardner Minshew comes back, if Nick Foles gets re-injured and like leads the Jags to the playoffs, which is completely possible. I think that's possible, just with such a very weak division, a lot weaker of a division that we in the AFC South than we kind of expected. We kind of thought that was going to be a very strong division. But regardless, I think Kyler Murray will win the Rookie of the Year. He is by far the best thrower of the football. And to kind of move to Haskins, oh man, when I was watching the draft, coming up to the draft, I knew that Kyler Murray would get picked first, obviously, because Arizona was hyping it up, and it was just it was so hyped for them that it had to have happened. So I wasn't worried about that. I knew Kyler Murray I thought Kyler Murray wasn't the best, but he's their guy, whatever, just do whatever. And I knew Nick Bosa would be taken by the 49ers. Quentin Williams would be taken by the Jets. Farrell being picked by the Raiders it still bogs my mind why they didn't take Josh Allen or another quarterback, considering that it's pretty obvious that Gruden doesn't like Derek Carr as much as he'll say otherwise. But so they just keep going through the draft, and Josh Allen's taken by Jacksonville, which is fine. They always want to have a good defense. And so we get to the Giants pick at number 6. And once they drafted Daniel Jones, at first I didn't understand. At first I was like, Dwayne Haskins is from Jersey. Dwayne Haskins loved the New York Giants for all of his life. He went to Ohio State because he loved Ohio State. And he said once he was out of there, and he went on several interview shows, and he said, if I got drafted by the Giants, it would be amazing for me. I would love to be drafted by the Giants. And the Giants drafted Daniel Jones, a quarterback who in his career has not, in a 3-year career, has not eclipsed 50 touchdowns, where Dwayne Haskins did that in one season. And I know all of you Daniel Jones fans will be like, well, Dwayne had a system where he could just do a bunch of touch passes and give it to his fast wide receivers. And there was a bunch of screens to J.K. Dobbins. Well, yeah. But Daniel Jones, if you want to maximize Daniel Jones, then you got to do those things too. NFL offenses do that. If you think that for a second that Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes really deserved every single touchdown pass he was a part of, then you're on crack. They built their offense to have Kareem Hunt for a while, probably a top 5 or top 10 back, depending on who you ask, at the time. And then they have currently one of the top 10 greatest wide receivers and the fastest wide receiver, mind you, in Tyreek Hill. They didn't, and not to mention one of the 3 best tight ends in football, if not the best, and Travis Kelce, I completely forgot, and a great deep threat in Sammy Watkins, and a bunch of young talent being added at wide receiver, and a great O-line, and a genius play caller in Andy Reid. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I hate that argument that people will go, oh, well, it was easy completions for Dwayne. Well, then does that completely invalidate everything that Mahomes did in his 50 touchdown season? No, it doesn't, because he had to learn that system. He had to take those reads and he had to create plays. But he knew line adjustments. He knew everything he was supposed to do. The throw was easy. The throw was an easy completion, but he still had to process everything. He still had to know the offense. So regardless, that's an aside. I thought that Dwayne should be picked by the Giants. I was completely frazzled by that. And then at pick 15, when he is taken by the Redskins, he can see it in his eyes that his career is over by being picked by the Redskins. The Redskins don't care about him. His ownership picked him. Dan Schneider went into the war room and said, "You're taking this guy. I don't care if we have 5 quarterbacks on our roster. You're taking him. He's our future," which is a great pick, I think, for Washington. But the head coach didn't want him. The head coach wanted Colt McCoy and what's his face? The backup at Minnesota. I forgot his name. Whatever. He had a roster full of quarterbacks, and Case Keenum, that's his name. So they had Colt McCoy and Case Keenum, and they wanted to go with that, tank, and then get probably another quarterback in a different draft. You have to be on the same page. First off, you have to be on the same page with everybody. Second, this completely will destroy the career of Dwayne Haskins. The only thing that I can see happening with Dwayne is a Josh Rosen-like trade where they try to trade him away to some better team. Hopefully it won't be Miami or Cincinnati or a terrible team. Sorry to say, I don't want Dwayne to go to Cincinnati. Well, actually, going to Cincinnati wouldn't be too bad, but regardless, it's just the only thing that can save his career at this point, he is not going to do anything at Washington. I would not be surprised if Washington went into this draft and took somebody else at quarterback, just because I know that they don't want him. And he hasn't been playing spectacularly. The only time that he's gotten any real production is when he's throwing to Terry McLaurin. Surprisingly, his college wide receiver and his reliable slot guy. So I don't think that it's going to work at all if he is in Washington, obviously, because the rest of the team is so horrible and they don't have a coach that can utilize that talent. If he went to the Giants, he would be putting up way better numbers. I promise you, he'd be putting up spectacular numbers in the end of this year because they would have kept in Daniel Jones, or not Daniel Jones, Eli Manning. That would have kept him playing, and had Dwayne learn on the sidelines, because I think that's what he needs. He needs a year to sit back, relax, and take it all in. Danny Dimes is not the answer. I don't think Danny Dimes will get. He is a worse Eli Manning. He's not the answer at quarterback. They're going to find that out soon enough, especially with his turnover issue. Like, he had the same problem at Duke. He can't hold on to the ball. But man, I'm sorry I got kind of frustrated about that, but I just, in the Giants' view, I think this is horrible for the Giants in the foreseeable future. And I think this is horrible for Dwayne Haskins and the rest of his future. And I feel so bad for him as a good kid, a smart player, like a very capable player. His mechanics aren't great. He doesn't have the best arm, but he is so smart at the line, and he deserves to have a chance in this NFL. And he was dealt a terrible hand by getting sent to the Washington Redskins. So enough about the draft. I wanted to talk about something that everybody's been talking about. It's the Browns-Steelers fight. So being a longtime college football fan, a lot of rivalries can get out of hand like that. I've seen Charles Woodson try to punch Ohio State players in the face. I've seen fights between Clemson and SC on Spurrier's last game. I've seen some big fights throughout watching college football and sometimes the pros. I've seen the Aqib Talib, Michael Crabtree, gold chain fiasco. And I think the only thing that I've seen worse than this was possibly the Ohio State versus Michigan in 2013, I believe, where they received a kickoff. Dontre Wilson received the kickoff for Ohio State, ran it up, and was tackled for a loss. He was swarmed by a bunch of Michigan players. He was on the ground. They were pushing him to the ground. They didn't let him get up, and they took his helmet off. Dontre jumped up, started punching them in a fit of anger, and they started punching him back in the face. That's the only thing that I could think of that is even close to this. I know that everybody kind of got what they deserved. If you don't know what happened, I'll kind of explain it. Basically, it was the end of the game. There were 8 seconds left. The Steelers had the ball. Mason Rudolph threw a screen pass to Jalen Samuel. The play was away from him, whatever. But Myles Garrett feels the need to tackle Mason Rudolph on a late hit, though Myles Garrett is kind of known for late hits. And they tacked him up for a penalty. But in the scrum on the ground between Mason Rudolph and Myles Garrett, I assume some words were said. Words have had to be said at some point in this game for this even to happen. And Myles Garrett started pulling off, or started pushing him Then Mason Rudolph grabs his helmet to try and pull it off. I don't know if it seems in the video that it's intentional that he wants to pull the helmet off. I don't know what the purpose is, but that's a big no-no in football. You cannot take off another player's helmet. So this is why this is so horrible. Is Garrett gets pushed off, Garrett gets up, Rudolph gets up. They're trying they're jawing at each other. They want to swing at each other. And two of the offensive linemen for the Steelers ran over. One of them is Marcus Pouncey, pushing away, trying to stop the fight. Let's just end this game. We're losing, whatever. We'll just go home. I don't even know what he said, but that's what I assume he said. So Pouncey's trying to break up the fight. Pouncey doesn't want to start anything. And then Garrett takes off his helmet, takes off Mason Rudolph's helmet, winds it back and smashes him over the head with it. And Pouncey goes insane. Pouncey throws him to the ground, starts punching him with both hands, kicking his helmet. I'm surprised Myles Garrett was okay. I'm surprised everyone was okay. Thank God that when Mason Rudolph got hit, it was with the padding under the side of the helmet, so it's like over here. If it would have been the crown of the helmet or the top of the helmet, that might have knocked him out clean. But Rudolph thankfully was okay. And so a big brawl got loose. Ogunjobi for the Browns also pushed Mason Rudolph to the ground for I don't know why. He might have known what was happening, and so he decided to rush in. But so that was the fight that occurred. My take on it personally, I think rivalry in sports is really important, and I think you should care about every single game that you're playing in. This was a big game for both teams. If the Browns lose, they don't make the playoffs. They need to go on a huge run to make the playoffs at this point. And for the Steelers, they're trying to keep up in the wild card race, and with a loss, they would be kind of knocked. I believe they would be knocked out of the wild card. I can't remember exactly, but it's just I was rooting for Pittsburgh this game because I thought that I really didn't like what the Browns were doing personally. I thought they were for the most of the season, they have been playing kind of dirty. I don't like Baker Mayfield. I've already kind of described that in a previous episode. I think that was episode 2. But I don't like Baker Mayfield. I think Greedy Williams' comments about their winning the Super Bowl were completely hyperbolic. I think they're still a year away or 2 years away. They need to get a real head coach. If they can get Mike McCarthy out of retirement, then I think they could win a Super Bowl. Because I know Mike McCarthy can centralize that team and really know their identity. Because they don't really have an identity at this point. They want to be a downfield pass game, but whatever. I just think my take on it is I do think rivalry is really important, but that doesn't. But the NFL wants to keep players safe, and with the suspensions, I like what they did. I honestly thought that the NFL would suspend Garrett for 5 games, and then 2 for Pouncey, none for Ogunjobi, and like 1 or 2 games for Mason Rudolph, just because he was trying to pull off that helmet, and he probably had some words in the scrum, and maybe there was something said between those two. Because obviously Mason Rudolph was not completely a martyr for this, I don't think. So, but the eventual suspensions were, I believe that they should have. That's what I said would. I think they should have given what's his face, Myles Garrett. I think they should have said you're out for the rest of the year and 4 games for next season, because this is horrible. You could have seriously injured this person on a non-football play. And if I was Mason Rudolph today, I would be filing assault charges. And I think his lawyer already started looking into some stuff for assault charges. I think the Browns have been playing dirty. First off, because the whole game they've been playing dirty. And I think that the Browns were told by Freddie Kitchens. I don't think they were told to go out and hurt people. I think Freddie Kitchens said, get aggressive, play dirty, and make them pay a little bit. So, yeah, I just think this is the end of Freddie Kitchens. If he loses another game and they don't make the playoffs this season, I think he's gone. I think management will want to get rid of him. And I think that it's just not a good fit for him. He should not have been an NFL head coach. I think Baker Mayfield having too much power as a rookie quarterback was a huge issue. And yeah, this story makes me feel a little sick. Just that something in this sport could actually happen in a sport that I really love. So anyways, we'll move on to a little bit of college football. We're going to talk about the draft a little bit more. So this is my mock draft for what I think will happen at the end of the season. This is going up to pick 5. I don't think I'm going to go too in depth until I know exactly what's going to happen and how the rest of the teams are going to play out. But I honestly think this will be the top 5 and what the picks will be. So I think Cincinnati will get the first overall pick. Thank Christ. This is what I'm doing all these based on what I think I need as each of these coaches and staff. But if I was Cincinnati, I need a quarterback and I need offensive line help. The biggest need, I think, is more so quarterback, because I don't think Ryan Finley in a year, I don't think having Ryan Finley and Andy Dalton for another year is going to be a good thing. Dalton wants out, obviously, because he wants to keep playing. He's only 30 years old. He wants to keep playing. He wants to at least be on a competitive team. He might want to be the backup. Honestly, I could see him going to Tennessee if Mariota gets moved around. I could see him going to Washington. I could see him going to even the Panthers, surprisingly. I could see him moving around a lot over the course of these next couple of seasons. So Dalton's going to be out. So we need a quarterback, because Finley's not the answer. Sad to say it. I like him as a prospect. I think he's everything Dalton is, just a little bit lower. But we need a real playmaker at quarterback. And the one that I really think is the best quarterback in the draft currently is Joe Burrow out of LSU. I like Joe Burrow's ability to move around in the pocket. He's so surprisingly shifty and surprisingly mobile. He will be like Josh Allen was his rookie year, where he's going to take off just because he doesn't know any better. Joe Burrow is a grown-up. He is strong. He can take on blocks. He knows how to slide. That is such an undervalued thing in my mind, a quarterback that knows how to slide. RG3 didn't know how to slide, and he was out of the league, basically. I mean, he was a backup in Baltimore, but he didn't know how to slide. The reason why Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes are doing super well right now is because they know how to slide. Cam Newton doesn't know how to slide, and he gets hurt all the time. Andrew Luck didn't know how to slide, and he gets hurt all the time. I think knowing how to slide is something super undervalued. And with Burrow it helps your availability. If you can't get the ball out really quick, then you need to know how to slide. So I really like Burrow. I don't think he's perfect. I think there is a reason that he had to transfer to LSU, but he will win the Heisman. And once he wins the Heisman, I think he would be great for Cincinnati. He's from Athens, Ohio, so our dumb management will be, oh, he's a local kid. We'll take him. So, which is great for us because he's actually the best quarterback in college football. So, Burrow definitely needs to be in the black and orange. I would love to see it. If there will people that will push back on that. They'll say we need O-line help, but really, I think he has a home here in Cincinnati. And then I think Washington will get the next pick. Washington, they really need a left tackle to replace Trent Williams. And I think there are some there. I don't know exactly the prospects for offensive linemen. And I think the best prospects will be Georgia, from Wisconsin, and from Oregon, especially Oregon. Oregon's going to have some great O linemen that are going to come out. They've kept Herbert afloat. And I think those are the two. Herbert and some offensive linemen are going to be the best pieces to come out of those teams. And of course, Alabama always has at least one good offensive lineman coming into the draft. So Washington will definitely need to get a replacement for Williams because Williams' botched injury report, whatever, was horrible. Basically, not giving him the health benefits that he needed. And Williams wants out. Williams will get out. He will stop holding out eventually, and they'll just get rid of him. And he'll go and play for maybe Miami or another team that needs offensive line help. Maybe the Jets would be a good destination for him. Speaking of the Jets, they're going to get pick 3. I think the Jets' biggest issues are also offensive line. I think this is going to be an offensive line-rich draft with so many good schools that are building offensive linemen currently. Ohio State might be one of them with Bowen, Brandon Bowen. But I think the two things they need are an offensive lineman, just like Washington. They might get Trent Williams, and if they get Trent Williams, then their second biggest issue is the secondary. They have to give Jamal Williams, or sorry, not Jamal Williams. Whatever the Jamal Adams, that's his name. I'm sorry. Jamal Williams plays for Green Bay. Jamal Adams really needs some help on the secondary because he can't do it himself. He's just a safety. Though a very good safety and might be one of the best. And I think their best options are getting Jeffrey Okudah out of Ohio State. This is a little biased. I like Jeffrey Okudah a lot. He's really come into his own as one of the best corners, if not the best corner in college football. He's great in man schemes. He can take away your big threat wide receiver, and we're going to really see if he can do that this weekend against Penn State, which I'm so excited for. Matching up with KJ Hamler, you will know how good Jeffrey Okudah really is against that big, that extremely quick receiver in KJ Hamler, and probably KJ is one of the best. He's the best wide receiver in the Big Ten. Might not be in all of college football. I think CD Lamb is the best, but we'll see Jeffrey Okudah over the next couple of weeks how good he really is. But he is a great shutdown press man. He'll even take some blitzes as well if you want to send him on a blitz. Even though you probably want to do that with Adams. But Jamal Adams, this is basically his defense. He is the leader on that team. And Okudah fits that aggressive, get in your face mindset that the Jets really want. I know they also need a wide receiver, but I think a corner would be a little bit more important. And this is going to be a wide receiver heavy draft with Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hill, CD Lamb all being available. So I think a corner would be a little bit more important, especially when they could get a KJ Hill later in the draft too, in the second round. I don't know about Jeudy or CD Lamb. They might be the first ones to go, but there's definitely going to be some wide receivers. And one of my philosophies is you never draft wide receiver or you never draft running back in the first round. Never, ever. Because there's always second, third, and fourth picks that will always be home runs for those positions. So anyways, yes, we do have so yes, I think the Jets will want O-line or Jeffrey Okudah. If they take Trent Williams from Washington and get Jeff Okudah, they'll be better off. And then Miami, I think, will get the fourth pick. Now, I have a friend named Rhett. He is a big Miami fan, and he's been wanting Tua for the foreseeable for this amount of time. But I think with this hip injury, he's going to fall drastically. I personally would not take Tua. I think he's got an injury bug. And honestly, I don't even like his tape as much as other people. I think he's benefiting from an insane offensive line. Najee Harris could be one of the best running backs in college. And the greatest, they have the best wide receiver core, hands down. There's no other wide receiver core that's as good as Alabama's and as deep as Alabama's. I mean, Waddle could be a starter on most teams in the SEC, and he's the fourth string. He could be the number one target for Auburn, but he's the fourth string wide receiver for Alabama. So definitely Alabama's deep in that. So Tua really, I don't think is as good as advertised. I like his mechanics. I like his a little bit of ability to scramble, but he doesn't have the football IQ that I really like in a lot of prospects. Someone who does and would be a good culture move for them is Justin Herbert out of Oregon. A lot of people said, well, I didn't see a lot of him play, and he crumbled in his biggest game against Auburn. I mean, he didn't really crumble. I mean, it was kind of a shootout at the end of the game. And they use the running game a lot. I think Herbert has a lot of Dwayne Haskins in him, where he doesn't want to force any kind of he doesn't make mistakes very often. He's good at processing defenses, but the knock on Herbert is a lot of his concepts are very screen pass, get it to the running back, check down, all that kind of stuff. But I think that's something that most NFL quarterbacks need to know how to do. I mean, Jameis Winston is not performing well, and that's because he doesn't know how to check down. He wants to force the ball. He wants to be Superman. He wants to do whatever he wants. So I think Herbert is a way better player currently than Tua. I would take Herbert. Even with a healthy Tua, I'd probably take Herbert too. So that's what Miami's going to pick. I hope that's okay for you, Rhett, if you're watching this. And then the Giants, I think, will get the fifth pick. I was between the Giants and I think Miami's other pick that they'll get. I think that this pick could be the Aaron Donald pick of this draft. And I think Chase Young from Ohio State will be the rookie of the year for whatever team he goes on. And I think it'll be the Giants. The Giants need defensive help. They need a big name pass rush guy. And I think Chase Young would fit that perfectly for them. He's the best college football player currently. I think it's kind of unanimous here. And I think every other team will draft for positions of need. And I think the Giants will take Chase Young because he is such an important player. The only other team I could think of taking him would be the Jets or Cincinnati, Washington doesn't really need a lot of that. Miami might actually, just because he's such a big name player. But Miami's defense has some good secondary pieces, and they need better offensive pieces, anyways, especially a quarterback, because Josh Rosen is apparently not the answer for them. So I think the Giants taking Chase would be great for both teams, and hopefully the Giants won't botch that trade like they did, or botch that draft like they did with Daniel Jones. So moving to the rankings for college football, these are my rankings that I have for this season. This might be a longer episode of the podcast also. I apologize for that. I will have timestamps in the description as well for that. So college football, LSU, number one. I think this is my personal what I think should happen. I don't think this will happen, but this is my current rankings. LSU, OSU, Clemson, Oklahoma, Oregon at 5, and then Bama at 6. I think Oklahoma winning in a great comeback game. That game was insane to watch. I think Baylor definitely bottled the game, but I think Oklahoma really boosted themselves up to the 4th spot. The first 3 we don't really have to talk about. They're all that's going to be the top 3 for the end of the season, barring an Ohio State miraculous loss or LSU losing in the championship against Georgia. So Oregon at 5. I think Oregon, if they win convincingly against Utah in the Pac-12 championship, they can make it in. But it's will be barring an Oklahoma loss, which makes me kind of sad. I'd like to see Oregon in it. I'd like to see Justin Herbert really show his stripes against a very good non-Pac-12 team. Because the Auburn game was kind of the Auburn game was kind of I don't think that was as true of a test. There were there weren't a lot of inventive play calling for Herbert. He didn't make a lot of mistakes, but I think it'd be best to see. I'd like to see Oregon in a bigger game. Maybe we should expand the playoff and we can see Oregon. And then Bama at 6. That's really because of the Tua injury. I think Mac Jones is a good quarterback. I haven't seen a lot of him though, and I don't think a lot of people have seen a lot of him. They're going to kind of move back to that old style Alabama run the ball with Najee Harris, 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of offense, which I'm fine with. But yeah, I just think they're going to be. I think they should be 6 because I don't want. If I were picking, I would honestly not have him in because their schedule is so weak. And kind of going to that, I wanted to kind of talk about the Minnesota loss. I think Iowa is a strong team, and they were bound to win a game. And this was a perfect storm for Iowa to win. I think Minnesota definitely is still a solid team, and I think they have a chance to make the playoffs. As much of a chance as Oregon does. If they win out and beat Ohio State, they should be allowed to get into the Big Ten or into the college football playoff as the winner of the Big Ten, because that means they would have to have beaten Penn State, had a close game against Iowa, and then beaten Wisconsin and Ohio State. So that would be that would be the same. That's the same thing as Ohio State has. If they were to win out, that would be the same resume. So and I've kind of touched on this a little bit, but as the only one-loss team that doesn't have a conference championship, people think that can get into the playoff will be Alabama. That's the only team that they think won't get in. But why not Minnesota? I mean, at this point, they have a better record than Alabama. Or, sorry, they have the same record as Alabama. They have actually beaten the team that is probably the best team they'll play all season outside of the conference championship, obviously, for Minnesota if they make it. Minnesota should be in ahead of Bama. They should be higher than Bama. Bama has no idea what it's like playing in Iowa. It's scary to play at Iowa. Michigan knows it. Penn State knows it. Ohio State knows it. And now Minnesota knows it, that playing at Iowa is one of the hardest environments in all of college football. And you can say, all you SEC fans can say, well, playing in Jordan-Hare is terrifying too. But it's really, the Big Ten I think Big Ten is now the best conference in football at this point. And that's biased, but I think they have more teams, I think, that can make the playoff. I think if Wisconsin and Florida, or Wisconsin and Auburn, I think if Auburn and Iowa matched up, Iowa would win. I think if Florida matched up with Wisconsin, Wisconsin would win. I think they'd run away with the game. Pun intended, because they're going to run the ball constantly. I think if Ohio State and Bama played, I think if LSU and Ohio State played right now, I think Ohio State would win, just because of the strength of their defense. I think that if Alabama and Penn State won, I think Alabama would win. But it'd be pretty close. Penn State played Georgia. I think Penn State would win. So I think the Big Ten is, for the past couple of years, is super underrated. Oh, if Georgia played Michigan, Georgia would win. Michigan wouldn't have a chance. Michigan is overrated. But I think that the Big Ten is the best conference. And I think this constant SEC love, this is kind of the same scenario that was brought up in one of my friend groups. We were complaining whether or not, this was a couple of years ago, whether or not La Liga or the Premier League is the best league in the world. And my friend Zach gave up the argument for La Liga, saying that the three teams in La Liga, Barca, Real, and Atletico, are the best teams, are way better than any of the top six teams on the Premier League. And they've won more championships in the Champions League than the Premier League. But my friend Blake had the argument for the Premier League, saying that there's so much depth in the Premier League that literally anyone can win that league, and it's the hardest league to win. And I'm kind of siding with Blake with the Big Ten here. Just being cold environments and harsh defenses, I think the defenses in the Big Ten honestly are better than the SEC defenses. So can we get a little love for the Big Ten? At the end of the season, for a couple of years, everybody's come to realize, okay, the Big Ten maybe is the best team or the best conference in college football. But let's just kind of say it now, I mean, we're kind of nearing the end of the season, but let's just say that the Big Ten's the best. Come on, guys. Come on. It's the best. I think Baylor, this is kind of switching up gears here. Baylor, I think, will be back in the conference championship. I feel really bad for the loss. They really bottled it, but I think they will be back in the conference championship. The only other team that I can think of them having any real chance against or having trouble with is Texas. And I think Texas is a good team, but Texas's secondary is really going to have some issues with a downfield passing attack from Charlie Brewer, the quarterback for Baylor. And then I kind of wanted to talk about Michigan State for a little bit. This is going to be a very long episode. God, I'm trying to condense this as much as possible, but this is going to be a little bit longer. Michigan State, with the loss with Michigan, I know it's Michigan and it's a rivalry game. It's in the big house. It's a good game. I think the Mark D'Antonio era is going to come to an end this offseason. He's been a great coach. He's gotten Big Ten championships. I believe he has 2. He was a solid coach, had some great upset wins against Ohio State. And I think he's a great coach. I think he's produced some great talent. He got Kirk Cousins into the NFL. He got Le'Veon Bell into the NFL. He's produced some. He's going to produce some good linebackers this season. That might be some first round picks in the NFL. But I think this is the time. They're sitting at 4-7. They lost to Illinois. They lost huge to Ohio State. They lost convincingly to Michigan. I think it's going to be over for D'Antonio, and that's sad for me because I really like him as a coach, even though he has beaten Ohio State in some key moments in their history. I wish him the best, and I hope that D'Antonio finds a job after Michigan State, or he might just want to retire after, because he looked so angry all the time. Maybe he just wants to hang it up. But I think this is the end of the D'Antonio era for Michigan State football. Sad to all the Michigan State fans out there, but I think they're going to move on, and they'll probably get somebody from the NFL. In my opinion, they need to stay. Michigan State will want to stay relevant as much as possible, so they'll probably get somebody from the NFL or from one of the smaller conferences. Maybe even getting Luke Fickell from UC. They might want to get some people like that, or the UCF head coach with some more offensive style, because I think Michigan State wants to move to a more heavy offense. So, sorry, D'Antonio. I wish you the best, though, in retirement or wherever you go from here. But I think it might be over for you in your job. So I kind of wanted to touch just a little bit on World Soccer, and then we have to get to questions. So the Euro 2020 is coming up. Very excited. We have our I have a list of some front runners here that I wanted to kind of talk about. My front runners to win this. This is a kind of long list, but the obvious teams that I think can win: Belgium, France, England, Portugal, Poland, Croatia, Spain, Germany, and Italy, I think, are the front runners to really. Ukraine might be able to threaten a little bit, but the teams that I think will be the first 4 to really win or to do well in the Euros will be Belgium, France, Portugal, and Germany. Germany has an issue where they have a lot of older players on the roster, and I don't know if Mesut Ozil will play, which is kind of important for that team because Ozil is such a good talent, but I don't know if he'll be wanting to play. He's not really been playing too much at Arsenal, so I can't imagine he'd be wanting to play for Germany. Belgium, I think, is a very good. They have a lot of young pieces, especially with my boy Leandro Trossard. Definitely have some strong pieces in Origi. They have great strikers in Origi and Lukaku. And I think the loss of Vincent Kompany might hurt them pretty significantly, but I think they still can threaten with that offensive attack, especially with Origi and Lukaku. France, always, they're going to be the front runners to win this. They have so much depth on their roster. They have the best attack in world football with Griezmann, Mbappe, and Giroud. As much as I don't really like Giroud, they have so much speed on those two wings that they could honestly play a false 9 with Giroud playing that center forward spot and having the two wingers come in and be pseudo strikers just because they're so fast, and they would know how to play striker. Griezmann and Mbappe are really strong. They have the greatest depth of any team in world football, way more than anyone else, probably more than Brazil, definitely more than England, definitely more than Germany. France is going to be the favorites to win. And Portugal, I think, is a good team as well with a lot of their young pieces. João Felix is a sensation. I think Ronaldo is not the same Ronaldo that we've seen in previous years. He's kind of doing a little Tom Brady at this moment, where he's kind of reeled back and not as playing as strong as he has before. And especially with all the controversy with him and getting subbed off at Juventus is going to hurt his playing ability. But I think they have a lot of pieces. Bernardo Silva is a stud. João Felix, again, is really, really strong. And Portugal should be able to threaten a lot over these next over the course of the Euros. This is only the qualifying stages, but I think these teams will threaten once they get to the Euros. I don't trust England because I know England can really has a lot of trouble on the big stage. I think I like Kane. I like Sterling. But my issue is they have a center back problem and they have a midfield problem, and you can't win a lot of games with those kind of issues. So yeah, good luck, England, and I think they're gonna threaten a lot, but I don't think they're gonna win it. Sorry, Blake, I just don't think it's gonna happen. And then Croatia is another team that might be a little confusing. I think they're kind of a one-hit wonder. I know that they played super great in the World Cup last year, or a couple years ago now. But Croatia, they don't really have the strong offense that I would like to see. They have great defensive help with their CDM. Who won the Ballon d'Or? Luka Modric, and Lovren, I think, is a better defender than people give him credit for, and I think he's going to get way better holding down that defense. But I still don't really trust I don't really trust them as much. Luka Jovic coming in is also helpful to them, but I don't think he's the answer as well. So anyways, that's what I think is going to happen for the Euro 2020. Belgium, France, Portugal, and Germany are going to be the real big contenders. And so let's move to questions here. The first question I get is from Wes. I have some more on my phone that I'll have to pull up. But the first big question I have is, what are my opinions on Clemson in the college football playoff for them? I think Clemson definitely has the ability to threaten in the college football playoff. I don't love their defense. I think losing 4 defensive linemen in one draft class is really horrible for that team. They always have good players, and they'll always beat up on the bad teams of the ACC. And I don't think they'll finish the regular season undefeated easily. They might get a little bit of trouble from whoever they play in the championship for at least the first quarter, and then they'll stomp their way through it. It'll probably be either Pitt or Virginia, and I think Virginia can give them some trouble with a mobile quarterback that they have and a fairly strong defense. They really bite into that team, and I think Virginia will probably win that, or will make it to that championship. So Virginia definitely will give them some trouble, but I think Clemson will really take over. And then in the college football playoff, I can see them getting the number 3 spot behind Ohio State and LSU, or whoever wins the Big Ten. If it's not Ohio State, Clemson will move up to 2. if Georgia gets in over LSU, then Clemson will be number one over both of them. So it's just going to depend on how the SEC and the Big Ten really shape up. I think the way that I am predicting it, LSU and Ohio State, and then Clemson at 3. And so that means it'll have to be Ohio State and Clemson. I think Ohio State will get their revenge. I am a little biased here. I'll knock on wood. But I think they will get their revenge. They will play strong. And I think it'll be a shootout between Ohio State's Justin Fields and Clemson's, what's his name? Trevor Lawrence. I think it'll definitely be a shootout between those two. But I think that Fields will know what to do more so than Trevor Lawrence. I don't really trust Trevor Lawrence as much as I do Fields, as long as he stays healthy. If Fields has had some issues where he's kind of gotten up and he's a little like shaking some stuff off, so I think we should rest him as much as we can in the Michigan game, as weird as that sounds. So yeah, I think that Ohio State will win this game, barring a Justin Fields injury. Also, their defense is way better than Clemson's, which won't be a bad season for Clemson. I don't think it'll be bad. Everybody will overreact and say, is Trevor Lawrence really as good as he is, and whatever. But yeah, I think Ohio State will win against Clemson, but I think they'll cakewalk the rest of their season easily. And then I have some other questions here. I got to pull them up. Let's see. So this is there's some college basketball questions. I got a question from my buddy Luke. How legit is Ohio State's basketball team after their win against Villanova? Ohio State has bumped up to the number 10 spot as of today. I think the ranking is fine. We're really going to see how good Ohio State is when they have to play Kentucky and North Carolina in the next couple of weeks, moving into December. I like the wins against UC, especially the first game of the season. I know it was at home, but I like that they beat UC. And Villanova is obviously a very strong team. I don't think Villanova is as strong as they were a couple of years ago. Villanova was a lot better there last year, I think, than this year. But I just think we need to give it more time. It's super early in the college basketball season. We will really see how good they are, because the Big Ten, right next to the ACC, is probably the best conference in college basketball. The ACC is obviously the best, but I mean, with teams like Maryland and Wisconsin and Purdue and Indiana, we're definitely going to see who is, and Michigan State and Michigan, who really is that really strong team. And Ohio State has a chance. They have a second-year head coach, which I always think you got to give a coach 2 years to really form an identity for a team. And they got some good prospects. But I think we just need to give it some time and really see. I think the number 10 spot is completely fine, except for one thing. I think they should be ahead of Kentucky. Kentucky is at number 9 because of their name. I think losing to that, I think you should be held to whatever, to the teams you've beaten and how you've looked in this year, not last year. Unless, of course, you're a national champion. Then you get a bye, basically, to be good. Excuse me. But Ohio State at number 10, probably move up to 9 and move back Kentucky to 10. But I don't think it's the end of the world. I think I'm fine with it. The rankings at this point don't really matter. Once we get into conference play and we kind of get some big games out of the way, like the North Carolina Ohio State game and the Kentucky Ohio State game, we'll really see what's going to happen. So and then Another question I have, this is another question from Wes. He was wondering what my number one was in college basketball. Um, this is a question I was kind of asking myself as well. I would have said Virginia coming into the in the regular season because they had some returning stars, they had some key players, but the Syracuse game where they only scored like 60 points or something horrible, I don't know if I completely trust Virginia at the moment. Duke is always going to be good. Duke doesn't have the returning talent. They lost a lot of talent in the draft. So that's the thing that's really hard about college basketball is you don't know how to predict the best teams because of their talent leaving. So probably Michigan State, I think, is the best team. I don't know about I don't know about some of the other teams like Kansas. Kansas losing and Kentucky losing really lowers them. And I think Duke and Michigan State are probably the best teams. But it's just really hard to predict at the moment who is going to be good because we're playing against some bad teams and we haven't moved into the into big time college basketball at the moment. So predicting number one, probably Michigan State, but it's kind of hard to really pick. And then Luke also gave me another question about my thoughts on the Astros stealing signs during the 2017 season and the World Series, and how should they be disciplined? So I'm going to kind of bring up a kind of interesting punishment. This is what a lot of teams in the Premier League and in World Soccer do, where they do transfer bans. I think honestly that might be an interesting punishment if you were to do that. Like say for this off season, you're not allowed to punish a team. I honestly wanted to kind of bring this up because I wanted to just spark some conversation about the use of transfer bans in other sports. So basically what it says is you're not allowed to get players from loan, and you're not allowed to buy players from other teams for an extended period of time. And I think this would be beneficial for the for baseball to use. So like this transfer window, you're not allowed to buy any players. Basically, you can't do it for an extended period of time because in soccer you get more leeway with that. But I think baseball, you could definitely use it in baseball with some of the transfers. Not in basketball at all. Definitely not in football. But I think baseball could try and employ that. But regardless, the actual question in place, what were my opinions on it? Sign stealing is something that has been going on in baseball for a long time. And I know that the media wants to spin this because there's not really any baseball stories going on currently. Really, the only stories that are happening are where are some of the best pitchers from both of the World Series contenders, where are they going to go? And where's Mookie Betts going to go? That's about it. There's not really any other story besides this World Series collusion. I think the Astros deserve to have a pretty steep punishment, considering that they worked their way into being one of the best teams in baseball. And some of the stats that I saw, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but some of the stats that I did see when teams were playing at home. So basically what they did was throughout the 2017 season was they would give signals through banging noises to the pitching staff or the whoever's on base based on if they should hit or swing, or if they should swing or not swing based on whatever sign they were getting from the catcher. So it was so they would basically bang on it if you should swing, or bang twice if you shouldn't swing, or whatever, or give out a signal basically. And there's some hard video evidence, and there's some pictures, and you can really see where people are coming from with this. Sign stealing is basically like paying college athletes. It happens all the time. I promise you that most of the great players in college football and college basketball are taking money from other outside entities and getting away with it. And I think that sign stealing is just like that. It's going to happen. It's not. You should enforce it, obviously. Enforce not having it, but it's going to happen. It's just a part of the game. Sadly, I think in this scenario they will get punished severely because of the just winning mentality that they've had over the past 3 years. They will get harshly punished for this. I don't really know specifically what the punishment should be. I don't think it should be, and I don't think it should be a fine. I think a fine is an easy way out. I think it should be a pretty severe punishment, and I think the transfer window shutdown would be a good punishment for that, honestly. Not being able, so like in that instance, people will probably ask, like, how does it work for if a player wants to leave? Well, you just have to let him go. You can't sign him. You can't trade him. You just have to let him leave. So Grinke wanting to leave would just have to let him go. Or if Jose Altuve wanted to leave, you just have to say, hey, sorry, you can go. Or you can have them stay and you can re-sign them, but you can't bring in any other kind of other talent to that team. So I think that would be a kind of revolutionary idea. I don't think that's completely the best idea, but I think it's an option, and I just wanted to kind of spark some conversation about that. So I think that's it for the questions, actually. So yeah, thank you for watching this episode of the All Sports Podcast. I know it's been kind of long. I know it's been kind of dense in our conversation, but thank you for bearing with the All Sports Podcast episode 4 length. I hope you all have a great weekend. I will be at the UC Bearcats game against Temple this weekend. Very excited for that. I will give you my thoughts on that. Oh, and go Wright State Raiders. I'm in the pep band for Wright State, and I would, if anybody can go out to any of the games, we always need more people to really hype up our Raiders. Men's and women's basketball. We might make the Horizon League championship. We'll probably make the Horizon League, and we most likely will make it to the NCAAs, barring bad stretch of time. So go Raiders, support Wright State. We need all the support we can get. And honestly, every team needs, in any sport, needs all the support they can get. So I was at the pep band game. It was a lot of fun. Rough loss against Kent State, but definitely going to try our best, and gonna keep pushing into conference play. Very excited for the college basketball season, especially me being a part of college basketball. Yeah, thank you guys for all the support. If you're at the UC game, look for me in the student section. I will be there. Probably be wearing my green Wright State hat. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know I've said that like 4 times. God, I need to wrap this up. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.